Um, Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all very much for having me here today. I'll make my presentation fairly short. I think you will all understand my point very soon. First of all, microphone. So, first I would like you all to imagine rock. No, not the music. Just think about a rock, the kind that you might find in your garden. Or what do you think about when you think of a rock? I imagine most of you probably think of a solid chunk of rock. It might be granite, which is typically very light grey with white and small black specks. Could be pink. Perhaps you are thinking of a piece of limestone, also usually light grey, although sometimes white or light grey with white stripes in it. Maybe you are thinking of sandstone, which could be grey or very pale yellow or brownish or kind of reddish colour. Or perhaps you're thinking of chert, which is a beautiful rusty red colour. Maybe you're thinking of schist. I said schist. It is a type of rock. Maybe you're thinking of gneiss. Gneiss, that's also the name of the rock. There are many different varieties of rocks, but typically I think when we imagine a rock, we are imagining a solid chunk of stone. What I'd like to propose to you today, let's think about volcanic rock, shall we? Have you ever laid eyes on a piece of volcanic rock? Sometimes it's big and dark and blocky. But sometimes those big, dark, blocky rocks have a very rough edge to them. Sometimes it looks like brown chunks from outer space. Sometimes volcanic rock appears in ropes, looks like black hair or something, the kind you pull out of the drain. No, I'm joking. Sometimes volcanic rock can be different colors. You will pick up this one and it is red, and this one and it is black, and this one it is purple, and this one has a lovely blue sheen to it. Volcanic rocks may be porous. They may look like a hardened cluster of bubbles. Volcanic rocks may mimic sandstone in the case of tuff. Volcanic rocks might be light enough to float on water in the case of pumice. Volcanic rocks have so many different looks and appearances and things that challenge us to think about the way we imagine rocks to be. Rocks are not full of holes. Rocks do not float. Rocks found in one area of the same type typically do not come in a variety of colors. Thinking about this, my proposal for today is that we think of volcanic rock as progressive rock, because volcanic rock challenges us to think about the way we imagine rock typically to be. Thank you for your attention today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Well, it is good to be back again, now doing episode 11. I'm glad to be back in front of the camera because I get to introduce 3 more terrific bands today. Who are they? Well, we'll hear about them soon enough, but first, let's cue the music.
Okay then, so we're going to start off episode 11 here with a band out of Italy called Karmamoi. Karmamoi, let's see here. I'll give you some background information. They're an Italian progressive rock band playing a very unique style of progressive rock. Of course, the rock progressivo italiano scene is very well known, starting way back in the early 70s or even the late 60s if you want to count that far back. And Karmamoi's sound is, I'd say it's a lot more modern. It doesn't follow that traditional sound approach. There is stuff in there that sounds like math rock. There's stuff that sounds like heavy prog. But then there are also these kind of sparse, atmospheric or minimalistic parts. Sometimes just a bit of piano or just a bit of electric guitar. The songs on the albums go through different moods. And so that's one of the things I find really refreshing about them. A little bit more, their background. They formed in 2008 with drummer Daniele Giovannoni and vocalist Serena, Italian name, Ciacci? Maybe? C-I-A-C-C-I? Okay. Anyway, and it was completed with guitarists Fabio Tempesta and Alex Massari and bassist Alessandro Cefali. In 2009, they released a single called Venir and received very positive response from local radio stations, independent radio stations, even outside of Italy. And later in the year, they played at the Jimmy Festival de Marne in Paris. Karmamoi continued to play at festivals in 2010, and a song of theirs was featured in the soundtrack of a short film called Cinq Notes. Cinq, I guess, anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cinq Notes. The band began working on songs for an album, and in January 2011, they released their eponymous debut. The career of the band began to rise, not only in more festival appearances, but also in radio and magazine interviews. An EP was released in 2012 called Entre Chien et Loup. By now, the band's sound was transforming from a pop style to a heavier rock style, and their second album, Odd Trip, actually captures that transformation from more pop style to hard rock style. And it's, well, you know what? Let's go ahead right now and listen to a few tracks here. 3 tracks, just some short clips from Karmamoi's second full-length album, Odd Trip. Here it is. After this, Serena Ciacci left the band to pursue other projects. However, one of the songs on here called Lost Days was actually carried over. I think it was remixed for the next album. However, it would be 2 years before the next album would come out. And we finally got Silence Between Sounds. This is the first I heard of them. I don't remember how I found out about Karmamoi. Maybe they just showed up on my YouTube feed. But anyway, this album here, same band, but this time we have 4 different lead vocalists. The Lost Days track carried over here with Sirena, and some other vocalists, but the one that really got my attention was Sarah Rinaldi. I would like just to feature a little bit of Sarah Rinaldi's voice right now here from this album.
Tonight alright, faring sky, white one giant shine high, safe from harm now, won't they trust? Sea goats still star burns fast.
That is from the opening track called Nashira, and this is a long song about 11 minutes that goes through many different movements. I should also point out that Sarah also wrote the lyrics for the songs that she sings on here. I think it's 3 or 4 tracks. They also had a number of other guests on here as well. So let's just listen to a little bit more from Nashira, and then let's listen to a little bit from 2 other tracks off here from Karmamoi's 3rd full-length album, Silence Between Sounds. In 2017, a compilation album was released, a collection of their music from the last few years, and then in 2017, later that year, they began work on their next full-length album. The Day Is Done was just released. I got my copy a week or 2 early because I pre-ordered, but it was officially released at where is it now? Where are we? November 24th, 25th? Somewhere around that time, 26th, 2018. So this is really fresh off the press. The album concept was inspired by the Grenfell Tower fire in London back in, was it July 14th, 2017. And among the victims in the tower, there were 2 immigrant brothers who had fled their country and gone to Europe in hopes of a better life. And very tragically, they, amongst many other people, died in that fire. So the theme of this album is that, following these 2 brothers who leave their country in search of a better life and ultimately meet with a tragic fate. Wow. This album, at first it's a little less aggressive than the other 2. The other 2 start off fairly early with some pretty heavy guitar and then go through their motions. This one starts off quite peaceful in the beginning. But it, of course, has the signature Karmamoi sound, the variety of different styles, and once again, lots of guest musicians. The only difference is that this time Sarah Rinaldi takes the lead vocal for all the tracks. So let's now listen to some 30-second clips from some of the tracks off Karmamoi's very lovely The Day Is Done. I should also point out that by this album here, the band is just Daniele Giovannoni and Alex Massari, and then with Sarah Rinaldi as a guest, but full-time vocals. Okay, I'd now like to move on to the next band I want to feature. This is Unified Past, a progressive metal band from the US. Unified Past actually have quite a long history. They started out, Steven Speelman, who's actually a guitarist, but who also plays keyboards, bass, and even gets a drum credit at some point, and vocals as well, I might add. He and drummer Victor Tasson were playing in different band projects together in the 80s and decided to form their own band. And around 1991, they formed the band. 1990, they formed Labyrinth. And Labyrinth went on through the 1990s, releasing 3 albums. Then, by 1999, they had some lineup changes, and they changed, I think, the format of the band as well. And so Unified Past was born. And they released an album called From the Splintered Present Surfaces, which was a collection of re-recorded old material plus some new tracks as well. They then, I think they took a break, not releasing any new material until 2008, when they released an album called Power of Resistance. And at this point, I should point out, Victor Tasson actually left, I think, when Unified Past came into being, but he returned again for this one here. We also see Steve Kalovi on vocals, and this was the core lineup, these 3 gentlemen here, through to 2010. They released 2 more albums, Tense and Breaking Up the Atmosphere, and then they signed to Melodic Revolution Records, as you can see here on my t-shirt. Okay. With Melodic Revolution Records, their first release was this one here, Observations. Though they are a progressive metal band and focused a lot on the instrumental aspect, for this album here, Steven Spielman says that he wanted to focus a little bit more on songwriting. So there are a lot shorter tracks and perhaps not as much instrumental work here either, but a fair variety of sound, not all of it metal. So let's just take a listen now to Observations, and let's listen to some clips from 3 tracks from this album. Alright, after this, their next album was called Spots, and I don't actually have a hard copy of it, but Steven Spielman, when he heard I wanted to make a video featuring the band, sent me the download for that album there, and that one, we can hear the band's heavier side, plus there are at least, I think, 5 instrumental tracks on that. So we're going to go ahead now and listen to some of the tracks off Spots. So, nothing to show, but you'll see a picture. Anyway, here we go. Spots by Unified Past.
I now know. Flowing around me, buzzing within me, rising above from down low. Perceptions evolving, sharpening focus, expressing what I never show.
Unified Past was going through a number of different lineup changes. We had Steve Kalovi leave, we had Dave Mickelson join on bass, we had the Labyrinth keyboard player, oh gosh, now I gotta check his name again here, Vinny Krivatsky, who was in the new lineup of Unified Past. He also went away and he came back again. So there was some shifting around in the lineup basically here, and ultimately I think Vic Tasson also left. So the one member who seems to have stayed with the band ever since its Labyrinth beginnings was Steven Speelman. Now, they had their release in 2015 called Shifting the Equilibrium. Here it is. And for this one here, they brought in Phil Narrow on vocals. Now, you may recall if you saw episode 5, I wanted to talk about Phil Narrow, and I wanted to feature some of the music from all the different bands he's performed on. But when I asked him if he could give me permission to use the music, he said that he couldn't give me permission, and I think he meant that he couldn't do it. But I wasn't exactly sure because Steven Speelman of Unified Past said it was okay, so I wasn't sure. So anyway, I'd like now to feature some of the music off Shifting the Equilibrium, but we're going to skip the parts with Phil Narrow, just in case. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but this album, you can really hear now, they've become quite a heavy progressive rock band, and I would say pretty close competition to Dream Theater. So let's listen to 3 short clips from Shifting the Equilibrium. Okay, most unfortunately, there have been no new releases, and I think we're not going to expect any. From 2015 to 2018, there were some more lineup changes. There were new keyboard players, new drummers, people moving in and out. New material was being written. But earlier this year, 2018, Steven Speelman announced on his Facebook page that Unified Past were no more. And now Steven Speelman is going on his own, kind of solo project called The Unified One. You can find him on Instagram and on Facebook and probably out there in other places as well. So The Unified One, Steven Speelman's work. Just as an aside also, Steven Speelman did a little bit of stunt bass work on the Colin Tench Project album Hair and a G-String, and drummer Victor Tasson played on the Ocean's 5 album. So we talked about those two albums way back in episode 1 of this video series, Music is a Journey. Okay, I'm going to move on now to the next band, Druckfarben. This is a progressive rock band from Canada, and I wanted to speak about them earlier, which I did mention them in the Phil Narrow part of episode 5, because he is the vocalist on here. And once again, I contacted Druckfarben through their Facebook page, asked for permission, and they said all was cool. But later on, Phil said, and anyway, I wasn't sure, so I kind of dropped playing any of their music. But I still really wanted to feature this band because they are awesome. So let's talk a little bit now about Druckfarben. So, Druckfarben is a progressive rock band from Scarborough, a suburb of Toronto, which also happens to be the birthplace of the Bare Naked Ladies, in case you didn't know that. The lineup consists of Phil Narrow on vocals, Ed Bernard on guitars and vocals, and, well, let's admit it, he plays just about any other stringed instrument on the album, from viola, violin, mandolin, and who knows what else. Then, of course, we have Will Hare on keyboards, Pete Murray on bass, and Troy Freener on drums. Now, this, Troy Freener, my apologies, Troy Freener on drums. Now, I got this from their page, their website. It says, the story goes back to the 1980s when Ed Bernard and Troy Freener met in grade 9 art class and began exchanging musical interests. They began playing together in a store basement, and one day they spotted some black barrels outside their rehearsal space with the word Druckfarben printed on it. So they didn't know what the word meant, but they joked that one day they would play in a band with that name. Kind of like the Spock's Beard story, isn't it? That'd be a funny name for a band. Yeah. Okay, anyway. At this time, Will Hare was learning classical piano, and Pete Murray was learning to play Rush. Phil Narrow was, of course, already an established face in the scene, singing in Billy Sheehan's band Talus, and providing backing vocals for Canadian metal queen Lee Aaron. Plus a lot of other things he did, which I talked about in episode 5. While Phil's professional career developed, the other musicians worked in various cover bands, unsigned bands, tribute acts, writing jingles, and teaching. It wasn't until drummer Troy Freener worked out a project for playing a couple of classic Yes albums on stage that most of the band came together and Druckfarben was born. They gained a following through their live performances, but longed to write their own material. At last, in 2011, their debut album was released, and a sophomore in 2014. There was also a live album and DVD released in 2013. Druckfarben's influences are Yes, Genesis, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, Rush, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Kansas. So, as you can imagine, they have a pretty solid base in classic progressive rock. Okay, and if you haven't guessed yet, Druckfarben is the German word for ink color. And if you do a search for Druckfarben, you will find, I think, druckfarben.com, which is an ink company. Okay. Alright, I also want to point out that Ed Bernard is a multi-instrumentalist who plays, as I said, guitars, violin, viola, mandolins, and he sings and writes. He performed on the legendary Canadian act FM's 2015 release, Transformation, and released a solo album, Polydactyl, in 2015. So, now, let's give a little listen to some of the songs off of Druckfarben's self-titled debut. this album here, Second Sound, this one I really like. This is a great Canadian progressive rock album. Let's listen to some samples off here. And finally, why not listen to a few samples from Ed Bernard's Polydactyl? Now, he has quite a variety of sounds and styles. I love his acoustic work, so I'm going to favor that a little bit, but we also got to put in a little bit of the harder stuff too. So here we go, Polydactyl.
But it's always paradise. And then some could believe that already come disbelief, one might say. Some could believe that they're already complaining again. Can't you see that I'm all belly aching? I'm misled and well fed, and it's time for tea. Where are you going for so long? And the autumn moon hangs like a whisper.
Okay, and that's it. This is where we wrap up episode 11. So I'm a little bit later getting this out than I wanted to because I've been really busy in November. But I got one more video I want to make before the end of December. Going to be episode 12, where I'm going to feature 12 albums by 12 different artists. So see you around that time. Before we go, a big thank you to Steven Speelman for allowing me to use the music of Unified Past and for the Spots download. Big thank you to Ed Bernard and the rest of Druckfarben for agreeing to let me use their music and Ed Bernard's solo material, Polydactyl. All right, and also thank you to Danielle Giovannoni of Karmamoi, who has been in contact with me about the album releases and so on, and of course letting me use his band's music for the video as well. Karmamoi's album, I've lost it. That's right here. Karmamoi's latest album, The Day Is Done, is just out here at the end of November. Druckfarben, last released 2015, we're hoping to hear something new from them. Unified Past, sadly no more, but you can of course find all these albums if you go to Bandcamp, and they should be there. Okay, thanks for watching. It's time for the outro with some music from Karmamoi.
I'm on my way, I'm heading home, I'll see you there. I made some food, Miss Erin's show is on tonight. Come sit back, relax, enjoy.